how we design buildings here in architect land is more than us just sitting dreaming at our drawing boards with our pencils and our watercolors. The amount of information that we manage, that we integrate, and that we synthesize is staggering. One estimate, one model, and one of the books I got behind me, puts the number of decisions into 16 groups of decision making with 133 topics. Feels a little excessive, but I've actually worked through that list and I'm like, yeah, I guess it is. It's an enormous amount of information. Now, some of these areas, they're deeply technical. What is the specific configuration of the concrete and the steel that we need to achieve whatever it is we're going to put on top of it? What are we doing for getting people in and out of the building in the case of an emergency? What are we doing to accommodate people with disabilities? What's the story with sprinklers? What's the story with the plumbing, right? And you offload those judgments and technical calls to me. That's part of why you're hiring me. So you and I, you as the client and I as the architect, let's just say, are going to be working on 3 or 4 of those decision areas, primarily around what we call the program of the building. What is it that you need the building to do? And then what's the form of that building? Is it 20 stories? Is it 3 stories? Is it spread out? The shape of the building and a lot of the family of decisions that goes into that. And we're going to talk about your budget and we're going to talk about your timeline, right? So energy is one of those areas of discussion, one of those areas of decision making that generally, historically, falls into the technical batch that I manage, right? And I might bring it up as a point of discussion. Now, let's just say that conversation goes one of several ways. So one of the ways that it might go is you might dismiss me, and I might ask you, please just hear me out. And so I make my case for it. But look, at the end of the day, if the technology that I'm talking about implementing, that I'm trying to convince you of, right, is easy to understand, and it's relatively easy relative compared to all the other ways in which I integrate technologies all the time. It's relatively easy for me to understand and integrate. I have confidence in the builders out there that would implement this and actually construct it, and the supply chain to supply them. Then why don't I just do it? Because after all, that's what you're hiring me to do, is just offload. Is you're hiring me to make these kinds of decisions. And I do make those kinds of decisions all day, every day. And I do it reliably. And I do it with an extraordinary amount of accountability, as does every other architect in the US that I've met, most of them anyway. But if I don't know about the technology to begin with, or I don't understand how to work with it or how it would fit into my building, or I don't know the experience that the tips and tricks other people have, right? If I don't have confidence in the builders that are going to put this stuff in place, or the supply chain to get it done in time, then what I'm going to do, if I really care about this technology and I really care about this subject, then I'm going to advise you that this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to work to recruit you into working through the implementation and integration of this technology so that you can explicitly endure the challenges, right, that we're both going to go through. Which means that the introduction of new technologies relies entirely on the passions, the interests, the imperatives and the priorities of both the builder, the architect, and the owner, and the supply chains, right? That's how new technology gets put in. And why those 4 groups? We are the 4 groups that, if there is a shot at reducing the amount of energy that buildings use for water heating the buildings during the winter, cooling them during the summer, which are the big decisions that this team can make a huge difference in. If we have a shot at that, then we are the 4 groups that need the assistance to make this happen. We as a team, suppliers, builders, architects, owners, we as a team, we push each other. We challenge each other. And it starts with the owners and the architects. And the owners will walk in, and sometimes they ask us to do something that we're like, oh, yeah, no sweat, we can do that. But sometimes they come in and they say, no, go for it. We want something bigger and we want something better. Edgar Kaufman walked into Frank Lloyd Wright's studio and said, hey man, I want you to do something really cool. Cool, what beautiful new bright building have you got me to build? Well, it's actually a backwoods cabin in Western Pennsylvania. Okay. And so Wright opened his toy box of 50 years of exploration and dreaming and experience about what was possible. And he used pretty much all the things that he loved, and he pushed the technology like crazy. And Kaufman cheered him on. So when we get it right, we elevate and create really cool new things. When we get it wrong, we can make some disastrous decisions that really impact people poorly. Look up Pruitt-Igoe, Pruitt-IGO. So the power that clients have, so if you find yourself in the position of being a client or a part of the support team for that client, the power you have is to dream and to push. So I'll tell you a story about that. I was having a meeting with an engineer. He was the head engineer of one of the largest buildings in the world. And I've been doing some work for him over the years, and we were taking a break from something, and he just looked at me and he said, I really wish your profession would push harder on my scopes of work. His process was that he pulled together a scope of work and put it a request for proposals from architects out on the street, and that's how they got architects to respond. And I said to him, Bob, by the time I get your proposal, which is kind of threadbare, but then the 500 pages of supplemental requirements that goes with it, by the time I get through that and then survive a 3-way cutthroat competition for your business, and I start the project, I'm disinclined to challenge your scope of work. Besides, I know that if we change your scope of work too much, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to have to toss the whole thing, potentially. We're going to have to start over. He leaned back in his chair and he said, well, I hadn't considered that about our relationship. But what he was really telling me was that he was open to collaboration. He was open to learning. He was open to exploring. He was open to wild ideas, for Pete's sake, about how we could make a better building for him. Right? So, Wright didn't propose to Guggenheim to build a museum in the middle of Manhattan, right? Solomon Guggenheim decided to, share his art collection with the world, and happened to hire Wright to do it. And when it was done, they opened a museum that millions of people have seen. I think it's also a World Heritage Site. And it didn't have storage from the word jump. So Wright and Kaufman fought over storage. They had a great relationship by all accounts, but they fought over storage. And Guggenheim's position on this issue was that he wanted some. So there's always this question, there's always the tension of what is the future? What are the intentions of the building? What is it that we want to get done out of this building? What's important? Those 16 areas represent parts of our technical know-how, part of our methodology know-how, our supply chain know-how, our cultural vibe, the things we want to do, the things that are cool, the things that we consider, desirable. All of that is in constant flux. And that flux creates flexibility in our environments, in our design cycle. It means that I can create a lot of change really quickly. Edgar Kaufman didn't invite Frank Lloyd Wright to design and build his primary residence, and he didn't invite Wright to change the Kaufman department stores. Edgar Kaufman invited Frank Lloyd Wright to design a cabin in the backwoods of Western Pennsylvania. It was a private residence that nobody else was going to see. Nobody would see it. And it became a World Heritage Site, one of the most innovative buildings of its time and arguably of all time, and one of the most influential projects of the 20th century, because a bunch of people got together, a bunch of thoughtful people got together and collaborated and shared information in a concentrated period of time that was useful, that it was timely, that it was actionable. I could actually construct it. Okay? And this is the power of my profession, to help my collaborators choose differently before we commit to construction. Because once I commit to construction, the average amount of time between the moment I construct something and the time I change it is about 20 years. So whatever decisions I make about how that building is going to use energy gets locked in for 20 years.